At long last, our long regional nightmare is over. The thing that we dreaded most, our greatest fears were not realized, still a loss, Nick.
Yep.
Still 1-3, something that the Pats haven't been literally since, I think,
Before me.
Yeah, since 2000. Right. Since you were gestating in the womb was the last time they were 1-3.
Hey, come on. I was born in 99. Give me a break.
Well, I'm not saying you weren't gestating in the womb after that. I don't know what your childhood was like. I'm sorry, Mrs. Fasoli. I'm just saying, like, it was. Listen, I was dreading this. I thought it would be blowout city. I watched Brady the last few weeks, and I said, when he comes to Foxborough, he's going to throw 8 touchdowns. He's going to run up the score. But he was facing the greatest coach that he's ever had to face.
Yep.
I say that without fear of contradiction. The Pats made a game of it. We'll get into this with our guest, but I mean, it wasn't. It's still an L, but it wasn't the disaster that we thought it was. Is that at least fair to say?
Totally agree. I mean, we know Brady for the last 20 years. Whenever you come off a loss, regardless if it's a bad loss, they're getting blown out, whatever. He comes off a loss from the Rams. I thought we were going to get fucking steamrolled, literally steamrolled. And he comes in and we hold them to 2 field goals in the first half. Brady has scored 30 plus points in the last 2 years of his career in the probably 3/4 of his games. He's led 30 plus point games. So, I mean, yes, it's a negative that we lost, but I think we have a very, very bright future. And I think our quarterback is finally our quarterback.
Yeah. And let's add to it, not only the way Brady's looked so far this year, but how bad the Pats looked in week 3 against New Orleans. I mean, just a total clusterfuck.
And then New Orleans gets blown out today by the Giants.
Right. Exactly. They're still making mistakes, whatever. But what we found is that they have a quarterback who can overcome them.
That's right.
I mean, a interception that I would again posit was not his fault.
Nope.
And then, a egregious fumble by JJ Taylor, and that cost them while they were driving, while they had a chance to put points on the board. Again, this, not to do the losers lament thing, but just to say the most important part of this team right now is that they can improve what they're doing around building a franchise quarterback. And right now, I have every reason to think, and I think we all do, that Mac Jones is that franchise quarterback, that he looks poised when they're not blocking for him. He's finding receivers when he maybe doesn't have them all that open. And, he went toe to toe against the best that's ever been.
The greatest of all time.
Yeah. And is it crazy to say that, given the fact that he had no running game and no protection, that he outplayed Brady?
No. I mean, at one point in the third quarter, they popped up the stats. Mac was outplaying Brady 24 for 39 with over 150 yards. And Brady was up there, but he was not to Mac's stats. It was unbelievable.
Okay. Now let me just speak. I'll channel every negative a-hole out there who every sports radio host or whatever that wants to always just take the contrarian viewpoint. Oh, listen to these guys. Listen, it's great. Yeah, you 1-3. You've lost 3 games at home. Like, what are you being positive about? It just because, we're looking at what the biggest piece of this puzzle is the quarterback. If they hadn't drafted Mac Jones, if they, didn't make a trade for like a Jimmy Garoppolo, and they were playing okay, but their quarterback position was a disaster, there'd be nothing to feel good about.
Nope.
Instead, they're staying with teams to an extent, but it's not through the lack of having a guy under center, even at the age of 23. And this fun fact about this game, it was the greatest disparity in age between 2 starting quarterbacks in NFL history.
Wow. And
the 23-year-old outplayed the 44-year-old. Just, they couldn't force a turnover against Tampa. Tampa made a couple more plays than they did. And the most consistent kicker in football hit an upright from 56 yards out. I mean,
in the rain, in the pouring rain.
Pouring rain.
It was the worst rain of the night yet when he went to go kick.
Yep. After a penalty, push them more out of field range.
All I have to say before we get into our special guest is we are in Massachusetts.
Oh, A plus. We have a T-shirt to that effect.
We possibly could, but we do have some T-shirts for you guys coming soon.
Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna get a Massachusetts one in there.
That's right.
So our guest this week, really happy to get him. Barstool's own Stephen Cheah, former employee of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy who knows them inside and out, breaks down all 22s, and he was nice enough to join us in his euphoria. And we should just point out this was recorded directly after the game.
Correct.
So all of us are operating on minimal sleep, probably maximum alcohol, and maybe
complete nervousness. My gut was wrenched.
Maybe some opioids. I don't recommend them, but if you get a prescription for them, I don't judge. Maybe some cannabis. I don't know. All I know is it was talking to Stephen was a lot more fun than the build up to this week, and I'm so happy to finally have this.
Brady week is over.
Yeah, so now we can start focusing on like regular garden variety, ordinary games, and maybe a few wins here. So appreciate it. This is Do Your Pod, introducing our special guest, Stephen Cheah. All right, fellas, I'm going to start us off with two references that one I know is too obscure for anybody other than the population of me to get. And the other one, if you know your Patriots history, you'll pick up on it. But if it's, since what I'm about to reference is when Nick was in diapers, and I'm assuming you're not in diapers now, that it will mean nothing to you. However, okay, so the first one is when I was a kid, I got about 57 book reports out of My Turn at Bat, The Story of My Life by Ted Williams. And it starts off and he's talking about his career. And the first line of the book, I will never forget it, is, I'm glad it's over. Before anything else, understand, I'm glad it's over. Me personally, I'm so friggin' happy to have the Battle of the Gods, Ragnarok, go to Damarung to be in my rear view. So now we can finally talk about it instead of me just dreading it. And the second one is, so 2001, the Patriots had a young, up-and-coming, and yet unproven quarterback who faced one of the best teams in football, and for sure, one of the best passing offenses. And they stood them toe-to-toe, and it was on Sunday Night Football, and they lost by a score, and that was the greatest show on turf, Rams. The Patriots at that point dropped to 5-5, but the takeaway from everyone, it was almost unanimous, was, okay, you know what? They can at least hang with the big guns. Like, again, they're a 500 team. No one knows what's going on here, but at least it showed that the moment the competition was not too big for them, and their quarterback then was Tom Brady. And now it just, because history repeats itself, now it's Mac Jones going mano a mano, more or less, with Tom Brady. And I don't believe in moral victories. I'm a Patriots fan, so obviously I prefer my victories as immoral as possible. If it involves cheating or lucky breaks or whatever, I'll take that. But okay, I was expecting blowout city, and instead it took a field goal doinking off of an upright to lose this thing. Stephen, where are you coming at from this?
So I completely agree with you. I'm glad it's over, just because this was the date when the schedule came out. It was circled. Tom Brady's returning home. He's going to break the passing record. Nice job by the schedule makers, kind of lining those things up. And then we can kind of move on with the rest of our season. Even last week when we were playing the Rams, the talk before the game was, okay, next week he's going to Fox Sports. Like, okay, we're playing the Rams. Like, this is maybe the best team in the NFC, or one of the best teams in the NFC. Like, let's focus on this game. So I'm glad it's over. We escaped with a win. It reminded me a lot, for anybody who knows the recent history of the Bucs. Like, we played the Giants last year on Monday Night Football and barely squeaked out a win against an inferior team who played well, and we kind of played down to the competition. Not to say that the Patriots are a bad team. Their record is 1-3, but I think they played pretty well tonight. What I will say and I hear this from Dave, I heard this from Gaz, I hear this from a lot of people. It's like Mac Jones reminds them of Tom Brady. Okay, like a little bit. Tom Brady, and they showed the stats earlier in the broadcast, is that Tom Brady early on was not the Tom Brady he is now. He's not putting up eye-popping numbers. He's a quarterback who is, I wouldn't say a game manager, but he can keep you in the game, and then he can win you the game at the end. I think Mac Jones did a good job of that tonight, and he put his team in position to win the game. Whether there was a pass interference on a Hunter Henry ball, and that was very clearly behind him. There's also some very suspicious time work, like timekeeping on the final drive. There was like a 5-step drop that was a deep ball that was 4 seconds somehow. Didn't love that. Ball didn't lie at the end. Nick Folk missed the field goal. We also missed the field goal. Rain played a lot in it. I think Belichick had a great scheme. As a football purist, it was a great chess match to watch. I think the weather did play a factor into that, but it was a great chess match. I think the better team won, but I thought the Patriots showed some promise, especially with Mac Jones.
Yeah, Nick.
There's a lot to talk about so far, but first off, before the game even started, when the Adele song came on, I almost started going into tears. And then I knew that's how the game was going to go the entire time. But there were many things, and we went up against a great defense this week, and the offensive line struggled a ton. Yep. Mac was firing the balls off, and he looked like Brady. He was ripping them at about 3 seconds in the pocket, and he had to. Look at Stevens' defensive line. Vea was up front and in the pocket the entire game. And I'm shocked because he wasn't gassed or winded. It looked like he played all 4 quarters coming off last week where they were rotating those 2 guys. I was shocked. I thought they were going to not rotate them, but you wouldn't see them on every play. I saw Vea on every single play.
Yeah, and just to bring the 2 things that you guys said together, absolutely, Nick. The protection was again a problem. Like every time Jones goes back to throw, there's somebody in his grill, whether or not they're blitzing. And I know that the Pats are getting blitz second most in the league. And I want to say that coming into the game, Tampa was second or third in terms of pressures. Don't quote me on that. But those 2 things came together. And then, when guys are comparing Mac Jones to Brady in those early days as a starting quarterback, he had a lot of games where he was straight up a game manager. You really, if you look at his progression, you had to get into like a game against the Chargers where all of a sudden then he broke through. And then the first game, and I've always said this is when I said he's my ride or die, and I never want to see Drew Bledsoe back again, was when Bledsoe was healthy. And this was the week after the Rams lost, when they narrowly lost to the Rams. And I said, okay, let's see how Brady does now that he's got the highest paid player in NFL history staring laser beams at him from the sidelines. And Brady threw like 4 touchdowns and no picks and like 258 yards. And I said, okay, he's proven. But that early Brady had a running game. He had an elite defense. He had great pass blocking. The Mac Jones we saw tonight had a good defense that kept Brady off balance, but less than 0 running game. The running game was a liability.
-1 rushing yard.
Was that the total? So
Yep.
Brady had that 6 yards on that first down pickup, and the Pats had 7 fewer yards than a
Correct.
44-year-old.
Yep.
And no pass protection. So everything he was doing on his own. And that's why I feel great. And I've said this to Nick recently. If everybody on this Patriots team was getting A's and B's, but Mac Jones was getting a D, it would be disaster. Instead, it's the opposite. So the things that they're doing are correctable. The fumbles, the stupid penalties or whatever. But you can't correct a terrible quarterback necessarily. And what they've got right now is a guy who's shown that he can put a drive together completely on his own. And if I had to choose, I would rather have it this situation than the dark alternate timeline thing that I just described.
How would you feel going into the game if I told you Mac Jones was going to throw the ball 40 times?
And that used to be a sign of disaster, but Brady has completely flipped the script on that. And I can't remember the numbers, but games where he's thrown more than 50 times, he's way above 500. And the rest of the population of NFL quarterbacks in history are well below 500 on that. So, I'm fine with Mac Jones throwing the ball that many times, especially against Tampa, because that's how you beat them. That's how Matthew Stafford did it. I think Stafford on empty sets, so 5 wide, was like 12 for 16, and his passer rating was like 140. And I said, going into the game, that's what I want to see the Pats try to do. And instead, McDaniels kept going out in these eye formations, offset eyes, and it's like, how many times is it going to take before you realize this is not the formula for beating this team? And when you've got, Richard Sherman, who was sitting at home with his feet up, like binge watching Only Murders in the Building. And now you've got him lined up, like try to give Mac Jones a chance to beat him. And that's what was working for them. And they just kept trying to run the ball. So, credit to McDaniels for finally saying, all right, well, this is goddamn futile. Let's just let the rookie try to win it for us.
Yeah, and I thought they did a good job mixing the trick plays. So Jacoby Myers threw 2 passes, completed in both. The one early that was like 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 17 or something like that, where they almost got it, was a gutsy call. I actually thought that they should have gone for that because it was right around midfield. And it was early. I think it was like right before the end of the half. So they could have, closed out the half holding the ball and, going to score range. If they don't get it, of course, they're going to give the ball back to Tom Brady in a short field. But I thought Tony Dungy talked about a pregame when Bill Belichick is playing a really good quarterback, he is extra aggressive and makes, less conservative calls, especially on 4th down. So I was kind of surprised by that measure. But while Mac Jones deserves a lot of credit, I think he was very accurate. What was most impressive to me watching is not, necessarily a Mac Jones fan or a Patriots fan, is he's a young guy and he's standing in there against the blitz and he's getting crushed on a lot of these throws. He's getting crushed right after he releases it. And, I don't want to say he's like stepping away or fading back because, it looks like that a little bit, but he's doing a nice job standing in there, delivering the ball, getting hit and moving on to the next play, which is impressive for a young quarterback. I will add color to it though, in that 2 of our 3 top corners were missing. And then our best corner, Carlton Davis, got hurt, I think, right before halftime. So we were, the whole second half, we had Richard Sherman, and who you just talked about was on the couch a week ago, Pierre Desir, who was also on the couch 2 weeks ago, a guy named D. Delaney. So these are not guys. Ross Cockrell's a guy who barely made the final 53. But I mean, these are guys who are not used to covering and playing a lot of snaps, especially Richard Sherman, who led the team in tackles today. So he did it. He has a subpar receiving core. He did it against a very subpar secondary, but he did a nice job. So credit to Mac Jones. I just want to put some color behind that.
Yeah, the one interception that Jones threw today, and like we've been saying already, the O-line, it was getting absolutely bossed by the Tampa Bay defense, and he was up in the pocket when he threw that ball. And he threw the ball and it was either a sack or the interception. So he had to choose. And honestly, I would have taken the interception too, because he would have lost probably 10 yards on the sack. So it was a give and take, but honestly, our O-line struggled where our D-line picked it up this week, because I thought the D-line last week was not the best. And Judon really came out of the bushes this week. He forced Brady into a bunch of awkward situations, and he had a good amount of – he had, 1 or 2 sacks?
He had 1 officially, but he had a couple hits.
Yeah, a couple hits on him.
After having 2.5 last week. And, coming into the season, I said he's going to be the best free agent that they signed.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting really here right now, 4 weeks in, I'm going to say he's the best player they've had so far.
His sack celebration of wiping the boogies was awesome. I like that. I actually got to interview him on Going Deep last year when he was going to be a free agent, and he had legitimately no idea where he was going to go.
Wow.
He just said Baltimore didn't really want him back, so he was pretty much going to go to the highest bidder, and talked about how he really wanted to go to a winning culture. So I'm glad that he landed on the page. He's a really cool guy. I didn't hear it tonight, but he usually introduced himself on Sunday Night Football with Matt Judon, Body Built by Taco Bell.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the first show that I did with Nick, where I talked to a stadium employee when OTAs began, and I was told, like, these new guys are great and they love it here, and specifically Matt Judon loves being here. And it's not like he came from a terrible program. I mean, he came from Baltimore, he was franchised or whatever, but he has come in as, like, a character, someone who embraces it. And there was a great meme that went around, and it was a picture of him at his press conference this week. The 6th time in a row, he was asked a question about what it's going to be like to face Tom Brady. And he's just say, if I can do the impression, it's like, really? Like, again, how many times do I have to say he's just a quarterback? I'm just going to try to go after him, I'm going to compete or whatever. And he did. And he's all over the field. He was dropping into pass coverage. One play in particular that stands out for me is he rushed the passer and Brady dumped it off to Fournette, who, picked up the first down, but catching him from behind was Judon.
Yes.
Like, had to, was 4 steps into the backfield, had to do a 180, and then made the tackle on the play. Again, still a first down. It's not a win. It's just a testament to this guy and
he was
how he
hustling all over
understands
the
and how he
field.
fits in and doesn't give up on plays. And a lot of guys get their payday and just, well, okay, now I don't have to make those plays anymore. And he's the opposite of that.
Speaking of win, and I don't want to be an asshole here and rub in the Bucks win, but Isaiah Wynn, what the heck? I thought that guy was a good player. Rough game. Gave up 2 sacks. I know Vita Vea took out like an entire side of the offensive line on that one stunt. But he had a rough game. That false start at the end that was not called. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
you could see him on the replay literally drop his head like he was disappointed, and they just let him play on.
And he's had several of those. And, Michael Onwenu is straight up their best offensive lineman this year.
2 holding penalties
and
tonight, though.
Last year, he was a revelation. And he had 2 penalties on the same drive. Again, that Jones was able to finish off with a touchdown. And so I don't know. It all sort of began with when Trent Brown got hurt. But he got hurt 7 snaps into the season. And they still haven't been able to stop this domino effect from just wiping everybody out. And still, this is what Jones is doing. Like, 3 quarters into the game, I'm just going, what if they actually protected Jones for 8 consecutive downs? How would that be? Well, he completed 19 passes in a row without that. So
NFL
Tom Brady's record.
NFL rookie record actually for 30 years. Something that one of the best offensive blockers of today's game, I would say, is probably Brendan Bolden for the Patriots side. He was basically covering Isaiah Wynn's left side the entire game and covering Mac Jones to the left. I mean, for the old man that he is, I love that guy.
Yeah, I mean, but he's a career special teamer and a depth guy or whatever. And the fact that they're like trying to rely on him is preposterous. Last week, he had 3 carries for -1 yard. If you know your division, that means he averaged negative 0.3 yards per carry. And McDaniels was giving him the ball in the red zone in crunch time. But this time they got the ball out to him on a swing pass. Mm-hmm. And, they were able to figure out a way to utilize him. But, to me, again, it all comes down to how they've got a rookie quarterback who can look at what a really aggressive defense that's very heavy in the front 7 and a handful for anybody, and be able to process stuff and make decisions and pre-snap and know where to go with the ball. And that's a huge one. Now, on that note, Stephen, what do you feel about the way the Patriots were able to throw stuff at Brady and at least keep him from rolling up on them?
I thought they did a good job. Like, defensively, they mixed it up. They brought blitzes from all over. They dropped it in coverage a lot. It clearly, I don't want to harp on this too much, but I do think the rain did play a factor, more so with the Bucs, just because they had more drops. And that they weren't really able to sustain drives. And you saw kind of in the second half, it's kind of like, okay, let's just kind of pound it with Lenny and kind of get by with that. But yeah, I mean, I thought they did a good job schematically. Brady looked a little bit nervous maybe early. Like you saw his first throw, he sailed it over the middle. He just never really got in a rhythm. And certainly the Patriots defense is a lot to be credited for that. I thought they did a good job making him uncomfortable. How about that run? It was 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6. And then Tom Brady, scrambles up, lays out, which you never see really.
I thought he was
going to
lose the
first
ball.
down to get it.
Exposed
the ball.
Yeah.
That was a heck of a play, but it was just great seeing just that determination. He had to scoot out of the pocket a few times on that Pats defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I like to think that they did to him was, and this would happen every maybe couple of years, possibly once a year, where somebody would throw a game plan at him that he clearly hadn't prepared for. And I'm saying just Brady wasn't prepared for, but the coaching staff wasn't. Every other year it was Rex Ryan. You could count on it. Then sometimes it'd be like Tony Soprano, not Soprano.
Tony Sperano.
Sperano, thank you. I messed that up all
Same
the
difference.
damn time. I put some rewatching the show and the Newark thing, so I could be forgiven. But they would just mix up coverages in a way that they weren't prepared for, and I thought that's what the Pats were doing, like a lot of pre-snap stuff. And okay, right now we're showing cover 2, but then they'll drop one guy down or 2 guys down and take away the middle of the field. And, you could kind of see the body language on him. Like there's times he was just like, trying to tell his receivers, like, you should have been over there or whatever. Then on top of it, he sailed 2 balls over Antonio Brown's hands on consecutive downs, just like to the flat, like not, 40 yards upfield, which is not something you see out of him a lot. And then Brown, God bless him, dropping a ball in the end zone. Like just
that
exactly
was a perfect throw. Would have been a storybook ending. Him going into New England, also revenge game for Antonio Brown with his long stint with the Patriots. That one game in Miami.
Those 11 days.
Yeah,
they needed him to go 5 months without going to his default setting of being a degenerate human being, and 11 days in, he shot his way out of town. And my nightmare fuel was, you call it the dream scenario, whatever. For me, that would have been my worst nightmare, is him catching the game winner, and he would have just gone over to the sidelines and happily taken the 15-yard unsportsmanlike or whatever. But he did them a favor. He made a few catches, but I really thought he was going to rip them to shreds.
Even the first ball that Brady threw to him before he missed the second one, when it was over his right shoulder, but he turned to the left, he could have easily caught that one. It was in the same area, back right of the end zone, but he just turned the opposite way. And it was a great ball from Brady too.
Yeah. And Mike Evans had one of those.
Yep.
It was on J.C. Jackson. It was to the left boundary.
Yep.
And the ball just landed safely at the sidelines, and you're like, Mike Evans gets that 99 times out of 99.
The one thing that I was realizing in the beginning of the game, it kind of slowed down, but the first 2 quarters, I felt like Tom was targeting almost J.C. Jackson, and he was hitting him against Mike Evans. And on Friday, J.C. Jackson was asked in an interview, how many times have you picked off Tom Brady in practice? And he said, I don't know, maybe 3 or a couple. And they were like, so do you think you're going to be doing it in the game? He goes, I hope so. Blah, blah, blah. And do you think that Tom did that on purpose?
I mean, he clearly loves to play, and I've always compared it to like playing Go Fish, but he can see your cards.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when Jonathan Jones went out for that one play, and Collinsworth and Al Michaels made a huge hairy deal out of it, and well, they should have. But okay, Justin Bethel's coming in, and he's going to target him. He did, and there's a 3rd down conversion or whatever. And so the Patriots went through every length they could to keep Jonathan Jones back out on the field, knowing that
called a timeout.
Called a timeout when they had few to spare, just to keep Jones on there, because of the understanding that Brady's going to go, okay, he's their best slot corner. But if there's a backup in, I'm going right at that son of a bitch. And he did. And I mean, not that Justin Bethel is trash, but he knows the weakest link when he sees it. And this is the thing, without Stephon Gilmore there, I was saying Brady's going to light this up. I actually was on morning radio in Boston this week, and I told him I think he's going to throw 1 to Antonio Brown, and then 2 to Alex Guerrero. Like just really to teabag Belichick and just go, okay, but no, bigger picture, it seemed like there was none of that. Like, I'm going to show you from either side. You know what I mean? I think once it began, it was a football game.
Agreed. But once the game was over, did you see the post-game hug?
Yes. Him and Belichick was so awkward.
It was a Belichickian hug.
But then
Josh
Josh gave him the world.
Like, you could clearly see Tom Brady was going to like say something to him, and Bill Belichick just like walked off. It wasn't like, Jim Schwartz and Jim Schwartz and John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh.
Right, where they're ready to throw knuckles at each other.
Right, but it was uncomfortable. Like, Belichick clearly just wanted to do it quickly, get out, do the absolute bare minimum, and he did that. Tom Brady looked like he was going to hug him, say, like, good game or whatever, and talk to him for 3 seconds, and Bill Belichick couldn't even do that. He did that exactly with Josh McDaniels. Right
and if I can stick up for the guy on my shirt, I would say that it's not that so much like, all right, I have contempt for you, so therefore I'm not going to get physically close to you. I think it was more like all these ink-stained wretches standing around us with their recorders and, the tape recorders and their friggin' cameras and shit. I don't want to give them that moment that they're all looking for. You know what I mean? Like I've seen his worst hugs. Like Eric Mangini, it was like when they were leading Oswald out of the Texas prison and Jack Ruby came and shot him. It was like that. This was just kind of, okay, Tom, let's just do this. And we'll, in a perfect world when there's no cameras around, I think they'd spoon. Like, I think they would just caress each other ever so gently, but I just think he didn't want to give everybody here's our moment that we're going to turn this into a meme or whatever.
So you think that this actually happened like in the tunnels of Gillette?
That they got yeah, I think they're both such uber competitors. I think it wouldn't have happened in a private moment either. That'll come like sometime they'll be at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, or they'll be on his boat or whatever and they fishing and they'll have their moment. But I also never thought that they're like close, like they're not the kind of guys that are FaceTiming each other at night. Like, okay, no, you hang up first. No, you hang up. Okay, I just want to.
Well, this is a classic Belichick defender, because what is the difference between a tough competitor or an extreme competitor, whatever the verbiage you use, and a sore loser? Because that's from an outside eye, that's what it looked like. It's like, give the guy 2 seconds and then be out.
Yeah, I guess there's also been times when Brady was accused of that very thing. And obviously, I'm a staunch defender of both
always
guys.
Goes up to the other team.
No, but I'm saying like there's been times when he was considered to be like a sore loser and had shitty body language or whatever. I think sometimes it's just misconstrued as pettiness when it's just they take this stuff hard, but the thing is, all right, I just had a wedding anniversary a week ago today.
Congrats.
And it had dawned on me that when this new Seth Wickersham thing came out about Brady and Belichick, I realized I've spent more time thinking about that relationship over the last 5 years than the Irish Rose and I over the last 28 years. Like, we're all just so fixated on what are their feelings towards each other though? Really, is it resentment or how much of it is appreciation? Yeah. Like, were they doing that with like Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw, Bart Starr and Vince Lombardi? But for these two guys, for somehow it's feelings and felt, and how do they feel and what are their emotions? And I don't know. I think they're two very different cats who share a common interest in wanting to vanquish all who stand before them and build a pyramid out of their skulls.
So wait, you, the ultimate football guy, got married during football season?
Yeah, it was. It was tough. All right, look. So Nick, someday you're going to be ready to jump the broom, and I will share this with you for this benefit. When early on in our marriage, I said, okay, here's the thing. The Patriots season is 16 games long. The games are 3 hours each. Do the math. It's 48 hours out of the year where I'd like to be wherever I want to be. Now, a lot of the times it's going to be on the couch. Once in a while, it's going to be at the bar with my friends, whatever. I just don't want to be held accountable for my whereabouts 48 hours out of the year. She said, fine. So first year of marriage, 15 minutes before kickoff of week one, her mom needs me to go outside at their house and help clear some brush or something like that. By the time my father-in-law and I got in, it was the legendary Bledsoe versus Marino game where they threw like 8 touchdowns or 9 touchdowns between them. We had missed 5 touchdowns by the time we came in. I said, "What? It's first year of marriage," but it got better. Is my point. So yeah, but that was even though it was 1993 and the Patriots really sucked all the ass.
Then you set yourself up for all the anniversaries, and then inevitably it's going to land on a Sunday.
She's learned to deal with it. I swear. As long as and this happened last week, and I might have complained to you about this, Nick, but James White is hurt and he's not moving, and they go to commercial. And while I'm doing that thing we all do, we just drumming on your knees, just going, "What the hell is going to happen? What fresh hell is this?" She's on her phone, just saying, "Oh my gosh, the Tony Awards are not on TV tonight. Are you kidding me? They're only on streaming." I'm like, "Do you even know me? Have you ever met me? Whatever." So she watched the game ish alongside me, just her eyes never left the phone. And I was like, this is fine. Just don't interrupt.
When you texted me that last weekend, I was dying. But something that was keeping everyone's eyes on screen tonight was Belichick's son, his play calling and what he was doing. But Billy Football actually had an extremely hot take about this. He was doing it so much throughout the game, and they didn't even realize in the first half he was doing it. What if he was making those facial expressions to kind of negate using play cards or any calls? Seriously, he was doing the same things over and over again just for the linebackers.
Signals coming in, he's just read my face like semaphore.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
like
crazy.
An Aldous lamp.
Well, no, he was doing the same things though. It wasn't like he was. So I don't know. I mean, that's a hot take, but it was weird to think about and watching him make those facial expressions, and it was obviously the comedy of the game.
Let me quickly debunk that. A football field is 53 yards wide. Okay, the coaches are on the sidelines. We're not even let's throw out the white sideline where the refs are supposed to be running. Let's just throw that out. So they're communicating usually to the middle linebacker who's in the middle of the field. So that's going to be 26 and a half yards. So we're looking at about, what is that? A little under 80 feet. Let's just call it 75 feet. Have you ever stood 75 feet away from a person? Have you or Billy Football ever stood 75 feet away from a person and tried to look at their face? There's no way that is any type of defensive signals, play calls, personnel, anything. That is completely untrue.
I'm standing up for my guy. I'm standing up for my guy, Steven. Come on.
Listen, I've done bar trivia with a guy who, if he's telling you an answer, literally would cover his mouth like a catcher. On a mound conference, do you honestly think that table full of drunks 45 feet away is sitting there going, "Oh no, he said it's Oscar Wilde." Dude, we're good, but I'm with you. I don't know. Yet Josh McDaniels is one of those guys who does it.
Gruden does that too. Covers the mouth of the play sheet. But I mean, if you're trying to convey that to the middle of the field, they have mics in the headset. You can just literally tell them.
No, it was funny though. It was very funny for the times he was doing it.
What if I told you before the game that the Brady Belichick Patriots Bucks game would be best remembered for Steve Belichick's faces during the game?
It probably will be.
Honestly,
Steven,
it will.
I just want to confirm with you as a Bucks insider that this, I'm going to say 54 weeks ago. So 2 weeks into last season, that at some point Brady went over to Bruce Arians with wire cutters and just clipped the cable off on his headset and just said, "Enough of your nonsense." Right? He had 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions at that point. He'd been sacked 3 times. It didn't have a passer rating like above like 86, I think. And from that point forward, he had back-to-back weeks of like 116 passer ratings. I think he was like 8 touchdowns and 1 pick. And I think that ever since then, if you went to Bruce Arians and just pulled his headphone out like this, you'd hear yacht rock. Because he's completely divorced from what's going on. Byron Leftwich, we saw that play a few weeks ago where Brady just looked at us. No, we're not doing that. And he called a play and it was 40 yards to Antonio Brown. I think those guys have zero input anymore. And it's just Brady is the head coach, the quarterback, the general manager, the vice president.
So Arians does have zero input. He, okays the game script and the game plan. Byron Leftwich calls all the plays, which is actually really surprising because a lot of people were theorizing that Bruce Arians would take over at some point just because he's always done that, and kind of like the Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra thing where you let a young guy do it, and then when things kind of get out of control, you're like, all right, I'm going to step in and do this. That was not the case. So Byron Leftwich calls all the plays. Tom Brady does occasionally wave some off, and they do have those, red dot meetings where you pick your, favorite, 50 plays where you're comfortable running. But certainly Tom Brady is taking orders from the headset and relaying those to the team. Bruce Arians' offense is a fairly complicated one. It's a lot with a lot of sight adjustments where if you see a certain route versus a certain coverage, there could be 2 different options. It's basically been said he didn't really know the plays the first few weeks and was operating purely off of a wristband and kind of making things work. It was after the bye, after we got walloped by Kansas City, where he finally started to really get things down, and we saw that kind of run throughout the playoffs. We won 8 in a row. Last 4 of the regular season, 4 in the playoffs, and then obviously start this season. But this year, he's obviously much more comfortable. He's been in his zone. He has 12 touchdowns or something like that through the first couple of games, and I mean he's rolling. So I will dispel that myth that Bruce Arians has yacht rock on in his headset. He's got everyone on his headset, and Byron Leftwich is the one making the calls.
He's a big smooth jazz guy. But Belichick this week said, they're pretty much running our offense. I mean, you see it, the flare concepts and the motions to, show what the coverage is going to be or whatever, none of which was ever a part of what Bruce Arians did. And his thing, like you said, was, okay, after the snap, you're going to see a couple of options and whatever. And that's the thing that, put Ben Roethlisberger in an assisted living facility and put, 30 interceptions up on Jameis Winston's ledger or whatever. And I think like now I look at that offense and I go, well, I recognize that. I see exactly what he's doing. But larger picture is the book on Brady is every year when that aforementioned, like, all right, this is, a good game plan that someone threw at him, that I always say, well, that's the blueprint. That's how you go after Brady. What is it? You gotta pressure him. You gotta move him up a spot. You gotta blitz him, which, by the way, blitzing him is like serving him a buffet. You're just playing into his hands. And I don't think the Pats did that for the most part. I think they threw different pressures at him, but would drop guys off randomly. And I think that's more or less a formula, unless you can beat them 4 guys on 5, the way the Giants did in the Super Bowls that shall not be named, part 1 and part 2. And the Pats couldn't do that. So I think what we saw was a lot of 4 and 3 man rushes, man coverage that looked like it was going to be zone and vice versa. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, it looked like they were changing stuff up where they would line up in one formation and then right before the snap, they'd bail out to a different thing. I got to watch the full tape to get the full picture, but it looked like they were kind of changing things up a la in old Rex Ryan defense where they would kind of show one thing and then drop off into something else to give less time for Tom Brady to kind of read the mail. So it was certainly a good game plan. Again, I think weather played a lot into it, but both sides played with the weather. So the Patriots, I think, handled it better. I think they're a little bit better prepared on offense. But overall, I think the Buccaneers executed and just it's Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. So I think the Bucs have a lot more Jimmys and Joes than the Patriots at this point.
Can we talk about the fact that this all came down to a friggin' field goal hitting a friggin' upright? Jesus, how can I feel good about this?
Were you happy as a Pats fan to see the Bucks not go for 2 and they scored the touchdown?
You know
It was
what?
like late third quarter. I want to say there was maybe like 2 to 4 minutes left in the third quarter.
I'll be honest with you, it didn't really register with me because as a general principle, I'm not a believer in chasing those points until you really have to.
Yeah.
You know, there was a game earlier today. Maybe it was the Dallas game or something. It was someone scored and they pulled within 5, and I'm saying, okay, yeah, maybe you could justify going for 2, but F that. Like that's something you do out of desperation. Just put 1 point on the board. Do you think that they
all
were
about the
tempted to do that?
analytics. All about the analytics.
No, like, yeah, there was so much time left that I didn't think it was a huge deal. The fact that the Patriots just drove right down the next possession and then scored kind of made me nervous. And I was like, all right, I really wish we had gone for 2 had I known they were going to do that. But no, I was actually okay with them kicking the extra point with that much. I mean, you're looking at 18 minutes left in the game. They're going to have a couple more possessions, so I wasn't super nervous about it. But towards the end of the game, I certainly had wished they had gone for 2.
Yeah, Nick, what did you think of the crowd reaction to Brady in particular?
So I mean, it was like they were playing their own Stratego. Actually, at the beginning of the game, they're giving him all the praise, all the love, and then as soon as the game starts and Brady comes on the field for the first Bucs offensive drive, the boos start showering down like the rain. It was unbelievable.
I thought that was perfect. Like,
Yeah,
well played by a fan base that hasn't always impressed me. There were times when I've said, the Real Housewives of Foxborough. You know what I mean? Like they had a game where it was the Tony Sparano Wildcat game where people were streaming out of the exits in like late in the third quarter. It ended a 21 game home winning streak. And people are like leaving in disgust, like, how dare you, good sir, like throwing their scarves over their shoulders. I'm appalled that you would dare lose a game. And I was like embarrassed for it. This was it. They've really gotten better, particularly with like the Deflategate and all that nonsense. I think it really galvanized people. But that was a great moment. Like they cheered Brady's brains out when he came out. And then when he was actually on the field, started rooting against him. Like, that's the tone I wanted to see.
So one thing I would call out, and from like a new, like, I never disliked the Patriots at all. But it seemed like there was, and they had mentioned that Tom Brady came out like later than a starting quarterback normally would, I guess, because he didn't want all this fanfare or whatever. It seemed like it was a really late arriving crowd because it seemed like not all the seats were populated, which is crazy to me. And like, I get tailgating and stuff like that, but it's the most expensive football ticket of the season because Tom Brady's going. Why would you not go there to see, whatever that video was right before he came out and all that stuff? Like,
yeah, that's a fair point. I got to check with people.
It was not as loud as I expected.
Yeah, that were going there or whatever. But at the same time, like those red seats tend to be a disgrace. Like that's the ones with the corporate box. And I mean, if you're a team on the road at Gillette, you want the ball to start the second half because the money seats, like, that go from the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line on either side are empty until sometimes 7 minutes into the third quarter. It's just because those are the beautiful people, and they're all having their chicken wings and and their friggin' pasta dishes or whatever the hell they serve in there. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Maybe it was really hard getting in. Maybe security was like super tight, but there was also no nonsense. There was no shenanigans. Like no one was booing cheering injuries or any of that nonsense.
Sure.
And in fact, I thought it was a genuine outpouring of emotion. I wrote this on Friday. I think that if Gronk had been there,
right, he
would have faced a 75-25 ratio of boos to cheers.
Really?
I think, yeah, I think
to retire.
Yeah, I think the way he did it, how he dragged his feet, and he had a lot of false starts. Oh, big announcement today, and then it would be some business venture or whatever. I think he was like kind of tone deaf with it, and basically left the team without any tight ends. Now he doesn't owe us anything. He's free to do what he wants. and having worked with the guy a little bit and met him, we did a Barstool event together where he and I judged a figure skating contest between Dave and Dan and KFC and Feidelberg. And he's a super genuine, guileless guy without a malicious bone in his body. But that's personal. I think the public just would have needed to vent against him. And then you would stay mad at Gronk about as long as you'd stay mad at your golden retriever. Like
Right.
Bad Ginger, bad that you ate my shoe. And then, she's grabbing her leash and like, oh, come on over here, honey. Let's go for a walk. And I think we'd be that way with Gronk. Having said that, I'm glad he wasn't there because I know Brady would have broken the record with one pass to Gronk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, how confusing was that? So Tom Brady gets the record, it seems. He was like 1 yard short.
Then
they're like, oh, they're going to move it up to the 14 and give it to him. It's like, what?
No, then they said it was a
talking
tie after they moved it. Then it was a tie. And then the next play, I was like, what? Why move it?
I feel like if Brady and Belichick both could have like collaborated on that, that's how they would have orchestrated it. Because I don't know how you guys felt about when Drew Brees broke it.
Yeah, the whole stop the game, bring out a laminated printout saying he did it.
Yeah, and then bring his family down to the field so he can have this genuine moment surrounded by TV cameras. Like, let's have this private moment, kids. I want to explain to you that, you can achieve your dreams, boys, anything you want. Like, daughter, not you, get out of here. Like, hey, sons, you can do this. And it was awkward and weird. And that it was the furthest thing from what Brady or the Patriots, and I presume the Bucs would have wanted. And I'm glad that the NFL had that moment stolen by this weird anomaly in how they measured the distance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe we can chalk it up to how the record was achieved with, Mike Evans maybe getting to the 15 or maybe the 14, and then maybe it's tied or maybe it's one behind, or when do we start this? But it was told, like it was out there that there was going to be some type of stoppage in the game and a very brief ceremony. Mm-hmm. Instead, what we see is no different from if a dude proposes to his main squeeze and just get a brief jumbotron, hey, nice job. Like, that's it. That's it for your guy of 20 years. He just broke the all-time passing record in your stadium. It was inconsequential for the most part. Like, he was going to break it. He needed 68 yards, and you guys couldn't give him like a, hey, nice job. Let's all clap for Tom. It was like Tom called timeout himself.
This is not a team that's part of the gender reveal generation. Let's just say, you know what I mean? Like, Belichick is still of that school. Like, we're gonna have a child. It's gonna be a boy, might be a girl, whatever. Just gonna have to, do a good job raising her. And I wouldn't have it in any other way. I guess, and I think they would have handled it the same way if Brady was in a Pats uniform and they broke the record. I think he would have just said, I don't need this crap. Let's go. I want to get in the end zone.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Steven, that you said it was very underwhelming, because obviously it was the hug at the end. And at the beginning, we brought it up already, but the video that they played on the Megatron, I was shocked they weren't playing that on the TV for the viewers at home. I was like, why aren't you playing this video? They weren't trying to portray it at all. It blew my mind. But the one thing that was very not shocking, but exciting to me, actually, through 3 weeks of Patriot football so far, Mac Jones has come out on the field and run to the 50. Tonight, he ran all the way down the field, and he looked like Forrest Gump. Those brakes and the training wheels were coming off, and they finally did come off this entire game. I think he looked like the quarterback of the New England Patriots finally in this game. Throughout his play, throughout everything, he was made. I thought they were really degrading his pocket awareness. I thought his pocket awareness was either good, and I would say a little more than good. And they were saying it wasn't great. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I thought he was moving around the pocket, escaping the pocket, completing decent throws. But
yeah, listen, I think when you're facing this Bucs front seven and you survive,
Yeah.
then that shows good pocket awareness. I mean, if they don't carry you off on the cart, then it shows like, okay, you're able to take care of yourself. And he's taken a lot of hits, but relative to how many sacks he's taken, it's very few. Like Pro Football Focus, I think he had a percentage of pressures that turn into sacks. I think he is like the third fewest in the league going into this game, and I'm sure that number is going to go up. But again, this is a tough front for anybody to stand and face, particularly when you've only got 3 games under your belt. Like anyone who's going to criticize his pocket awareness is, just completely not watching the same game that I am.
He got sacked 4 times, and I didn't think that he showed bad pocket awareness at all. Like the Bucs just got home with a couple of games and winning individual matchups, and that's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes they're coverage sacks, and other times they just get beat. Whatever it was, I didn't think that Mac Jones showed that he was like holding onto the ball too long or anything like that. I thought he was fine.
Yeah, and as far as why they didn't show the Brady tribute, listen, those promos for Chicago Fire aren't going to show themselves. You know what I mean? The NBC's got to make this the awareness. We've got 8 shows that have the name Chicago in the title that not only have none of us watched, but we've never met anyone that's watched one of them. But that's the whole reason that Sunday Night Football exists. And this is something I'm going to write about in the morning. But how many ads do they put on these primetime games? Do you sit there and go, do they think the target audience for this is watching primetime football? Like there's a lady and she's on a laptop and there's flowers and curtains and there's a guy dancing in slow motion. Like I don't mean to be old man yelling at clouds, but I remember a time when every ad was for a beer or a car care product or cars, and now it's for shit that like
now there was I don't know if it's 1 minute or 30 seconds, but there was just a Jay-Z and Beyonce commercial
I saw that.
of them wearing jewelry. And then at the very last second it says Tiffany's.
See, there you go. I understand why they show ads for like penis medicines,
Right.
but like, are you, we're doing perfume ads now? Like, I'm sorry. Like my mother-in-law's not watching the game. Thank you. She's vaguely aware that such a thing exists. You should be showing this when she's watching, Rachel Maddow or whatever. So just that's my beef. That's what's grinding my gears.
One last
please,
thing that I want to ask both of you guys is, who would you say is either comeback player of the week for this week or comeback player this season? And for me specifically, I think tonight Kendrick Bourne showed out, and he was the Kendrick Bourne that we knew from before we picked him up as a free agent.
Yep. Kendrick Bourne's a good choice. I would also go with Jonnu Smith. Mm-hmm. Not that he lit up the scoreboard, but last week I was convinced he was a sleeper agent, that he had been sent here by Mike Vrabel just to undermine the Patriots from within for the sin of trading them to Kansas City in the Matt Castle deal in 2009. I mean, he was beyond terrible last week, not just the interception that he caused, but like drops and bad penalties or whatever. And then, all right, yeah, he was wide open. Great play call by Josh McDaniels, but just the fact that he was blocking and running routes to me is good enough. Steven, you have a comeback player from
this is only for Pats or Bucks?
Yeah. Or
comeback player, Ronald Jones. I mean, he scored the touchdown. He didn't get a ton of carries, but just the fact he's been so in the doghouse. He's been either a drop pass, a missed assignment on a block, a fumble, and then he just kind of gets behind the sticks with the coaches. He did a nice job in his limited action to just kind of make good on what he's been doing. I know he was involved in one of the sacks given up. It wasn't really his fault. I thought he did a nice job overall in his limited opportunities, and obviously gave us the score.
I agree.
Last thought, what were your thoughts on Richard Sherman, who I bring him up, not that he was a huge factor, but I mean, that's a sexy name. And the fact that they just kind of threw him in there, and did you
led the team in tackles? I mean, you don't expect him to just like come in and start locking guys down. He played, I think, 5 games last year, and he's been a really good player for a really long time. And even in San Francisco, he was a really good player. But yeah, he's coming in with a couple days of practice. Bruce Arians said earlier in the week that if Richard Sherman's playing a lot, then they have a lot of injury issues, and they did. Jamel Dean got hurt last week. Sean Murphy-Bunting got hurt in the opener. He's our second best corner. Jamel Dean got hurt last week. It looked like he was going to be able to go, but then towards the end of the week had a setback in practice and was a no-go. And then Carlton Davis, our best corner, got hurt during the game. So it was a pretty tough time, and him and Pierre Desir are only playing because they have to. So I thought they did a good job. Richard Sherman with 7 tackles and then a fumble recovery, which was big. So I thought he played well. I mean, he's going to give up some balls, especially early on, but he also made some plays. So I was happy with Richard Sherman's performance.
All right. Well, I suppose we should wrap this up, and I'm hearing myself right now, and I'm realizing I should be ashamed to be sitting here at 1-3 and talking to a guy whose team is 3-1 and the defending champions, and feeling like, okay, we showed those guys that we can compete. Like, this is so friggin' Jets fan of me. And yet, okay, big picture, when you've got a rookie quarterback facing the greatest player that's ever put on a chin strap and holding his own, and were it not for some egregious turnovers and a kick banging off the upright in the final seconds, we're having a totally different dynamic. But at least I say it's vindication for Brady. But since I figured he was gonna like burn our homes and then salt our fields and capture all our horses, that okay, I at least feel like our village is still standing and there's hope for the Pats. Your final thoughts, fellas.
Yeah, I can empathize with you. I mean, the Bucs are very good right now, but the Bucs have been very bad for a very long time. And I've seen a lot of young, promising quarterbacks, my favorite of which was probably Chris Sims, but I know Josh Freeman, Jameis Winston, we see a lot of young guys. Even Mike Glennon I had high hopes for. You see young guys come in, and if you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl title, which I don't even think unrealistic Pats fans can think about for this year, the next best thing and the most entertaining thing for a fan's perspective is just see a young quarterback kind of grow and mature. And I think you guys have that. So if Mac Jones can continue to flourish and you can build a team around him, I think you guys got something. So we'll see. It's not a 2021 play, but who knows what next year holds, the year after that, and so on.
I think the future is bright in New England with Mac Jones back there as a quarterback. And it's sad, but that may be the last time we see 12 in New England.
Oh God. Yeah. Who we kid? I mean, the Bucs will be back in 4 years and
8.
Before that jersey hangs up in the rafters in Foxborough. That's all I have to say.
8 years. He'll still be there in 8 years.
Hopefully.
That's how it's gone. But at least now I can sort of relax and enjoy it. This was, if nothing else, wasn't successful, but it was cathartic. The longest damn week. I've been saying all along, it's my emotional Chernobyl. And there's few better ways to put a punctuation mark on this thing and then flip the page than talking to you two guys. So thanks for joining us, Steve and Cheah. Nick, thanks for the job that you're all doing. Everyone will be back next week to break down the week 5 game, and God knows it'll have a lot less riding on it. But again, Steven, appreciate you. Nick, we'll talk to you next week, and we'll see everybody else. Slancha.
I mean, you guys have a lot to look forward to.
Much
I'm not going to feel bad for a team on fucking 6 Super Bowls.
It's not enough.